words elementary. Respect torque got our flag, our military. Grade 3 had a written composition about the global threat of communism.
You are listening to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda. On this episode, I get together with some friends to chat about I Was A Pre-Teen McCarthyist, track 8 on 1996's Less Talk, More Rock. This episode contains 3 conversations with musician Robby Lester, actor Ryan Onan, and sociology professor Dr. Tim Gill. Robby, who also appears on the Note to Self Part 3 episode from September of 2022, kicks off this episode because he did a full record cover of Less Talk, More Rock, which you can download for free in its entirety at theghostwrite.bandcamp.com. Then click Discography and scroll all the way to the bottom of the album's list. Robby and I got together to chat about his love of the band, his covers record, and his thoughts on the tune I Was A Pre-Teen McCarthyist. Enjoy. Robby Lester, welcome to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Robby, it's a delight to have you here. And I just want to have you start off by introducing yourself a little bit to the audience because I just found you the other day. Well, you found me, I think. But I just want you to sort of introduce yourself to our listeners out there so they know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I'm Robby. I've been playing music for 20 plus years. I've been doing a solo project called the Ghostwrite. That is going to hopefully be full band soon. So that's super exciting.
Sweet.
I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I work in water filtration and it's pretty rewarding work. And I hang out in Pittsburgh and go on walks with my dog when I'm not thinking about music.
Nice. Well, fabulous. And what's really awesome about that is you're really just down the street for me, basically. I can get to Pittsburgh in 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And I do come to shows down there whenever the world is a little more normal. So now that I know that you're down there, I have just one more reason to come down to Pittsburgh, which I really enjoy as a city in general. So I do have a feeling that you and I will be able to see a show together in the not too distant future. You know what I mean?
There's a handful of amazing vegan restaurants too that we can go
Nice.
hang out at.
So let's get into some music conversation. So you found me the other day after my little musical pilgrimage to Winnipeg, and I was just curious what your thoughts were on like discovering that a propaganda centric podcast exists in the world.
I lost my fucking mind because I didn't know about it, and I read the article and I was like, why don't I know this person? It was, I mean, I've done a handful of tours through Winnipeg, and every time I go to Winnipeg, I just geek out.
Nice.
So
do you have a favorite Winnipeg site that you like to hit up that's like related to the band or like the Weaker Thans or Propaganda or anything?
I do, but I don't think it exists anymore. Mondragon.
Oh yeah, but the building is still there.
Yeah, I do. I played there once, and I just was like in just, it was sheer delight just being there, and yeah, it was amazing.
You played at Mondragon when that place was still there?
Yeah, shout out Greg Rikas.
Wow, amazing. That's fabulous. I was just there the other day. There is a new cafe in that first level. And then if you go up to the second story where Arbeiter Ring Publishing was, and then up to the third floor where G7 was, it's really cool. Like I was standing at the G7 Welcoming Committee office door like 3 days ago, just having a moment to myself. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I do.
So cool. Robby, how did you find Propaganda in the first place? How did you become a fan of this band?
So my story is kind of long and winding. I knew of the band in the early 2000s. I had a couple of friends who were super into them, and with with Napster, everybody was stealing songs left and right. So I had Halle Slay and Motor League, and I love those songs, but I wasn't hooked on them at that point. I grew up a pop punk kid that shifted into like emo and post punk. So I went from like pop punk, obviously everybody's origin stories are similar. So I was really into early Blink-182.
Yeah.
And I still I can listen to some of those songs and be like, these, I mean, for what they were, they're amazing.
Dude Ranch is amazing. Yeah. I love Dude Ranch to this day.
I mean, they're one of the bands that kind of taught me how to play guitar.
Yeah.
If I'm being completely honest. And then I kind of, I found the DIY scene in Johnstown, and I went, got into bands like Sunny Day Real Estate.
Yes.
Early Jimmy Eat World. I was a huge fan of Through Being Cool era Saves the Day.
Yep. Me too.
Early Alkaline Trio. So that was where I was at. I was in that kind of punk emo, and I just wanted to learn how to play music well enough so I could go on tour. And that's what my focus was. And I did that, in my early 20s. I played in a band. And then it got to a point where if I wanted to continue touring, the only option I had was to do solo tours. And it wasn't that I necessarily wanted to do it, but I just wanted to tour.
Right.
And then those early tours, my early solo tours, like 2008, is where I fell in love with Propaganda.
Nice.
I would be out a lot by myself, just in my car, and I would just be going ape shit to Today's Empires and Potemkin City Limits, and just going just wild. And I like Less Talk More Rock, and I love that album now. But when I was really hooked, it was like 2008. And it was Empires and Potemkin.
Nice. And I think that was kind of like a low point for the band's popularity after Potemkin. They publicly have talked about how they personally had like sort of a nadir or a low point in their own connection with a fan base and things like that. So I think that you were finding them at a point where they felt like kind of unloved in the music scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, they were my best friend on tour, man. That was always blasting those songs. I just remember going through the desert, leaving Albuquerque on my way to Southern California, just windows down, just being like, this is the best band on the planet.
Yes. Well, that's exactly how I feel about them. Obviously, I mean, I've made made myself very, very known as a Propaganda super fan, being the best band on the planet. Have you ever seen them live before?
Many times. So I
Okay,
only
tell me
ever
about some
saw,
live stories.
so I never saw them early on because again, I was, in the punk DIY world, but in a different space. So I saw them a bunch on the supporting cast tour.
Mm-hmm.
I saw them, I think, 3 or 4 times on that tour. And then I was fortunate enough to be the driver tour slinger for War on Women on their West Coast dates with Propaganda. And
No way.
that was heaven. Yeah, that was absolute heaven.
Oh my goodness. So
Yeah.
you were the driver for War on Women and selling the merch when they were supporting Propaganda?
Oh yeah, I lived in Baltimore for like 8 years, and I became pretty good friends with Brooks, Shauna, and a couple other people from that crew. So yeah, I
Holy
love
smokes.
them. Yeah,
Okay, so you were the driver for the West Coast version of that tour?
yeah.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about that tour. What are some of your standout memories of driving for War on Women while opening for Propaganda?
I mean, it was a whirlwind, to be completely honest. A lot of those shows felt like it was the most important thing happening in that city every night. And
Mm,
these are like giant cities, like we're talking about Seattle, Oakland. It just had this energy because they hadn't been out that way in a while.
yeah.
Um, and it felt very, very important and purposeful every night. And just being able to see Propaganda sound check.
Mm-hmm.
And just I didn't really, I didn't bug them ever. Like I was very like, I ran into him a handful of times, but I never really, I was like, this is, they're on tour. They have a million things going on. I never like bugged them, but I had a couple run-ins that were really, really enjoyable and awesome. And it's really hard to explain and describe when you just get to effectively watch your favorite band play twice every night, because you get the sound check and then the show.
Yep.
It was, it was phenomenal.
I had that experience the other day. I got invited to sound check on night 3 of the Winnipeg shows last weekend. So I was sitting in the room essentially by myself watching the band run through songs. Like I watched them play Duplicate Keys, Acaro, and with friends like these, Who the Fuck Needs COINTELPRO and Adventures in Zoocosis, like 2 times each on soundcheck. So I essentially saw like a private show during those sound checks, and it's a magical experience to be in this room with your favorite band just by yourself, sitting there watching them and just taking it in. Like, this is just me right now having this experience, and no one else will ever have this exact experience, because when you're in a show, you're sharing that with hundreds and hundreds of people. But when you see a sound check, you're like, this is just me right now. And it's really special. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's very, very special. I have a photo. I think it was one of the first California shows where they're sound checking and nobody's there. And I made like a big dad joke about it. I was like, "Up, everybody forgot to show up for the Propaganda show."
I love it. I love it. Well, okay. So, Robby, we connected and we were chatting on Messenger a while back, and you showed me this project that you did about Less Talk More Rock, where you cover the entire record. And I have my thoughts on the record that you made, obviously, which I can get into in a second, but I want to know about the origin story for how you wound up doing a full record cover of Less Talk More Rock. Tell me all about this, why you did it, etc. I want to hear the story direct from you.
So I got to a point where when I was touring a lot, where I would almost always sprinkle in at least 1 or 2 prop covers.
Mm-hmm.
It was just something I always enjoyed. I enjoy simplifying their songs on acoustic guitar and playing them.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm in the moments of I don't know what to do, from a creative standpoint with writing songs, I'll just learn another Propaganda song.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And it was right at the beginning of the pandemic, and I needed a project that I could focus on, so I wasn't always just thinking about the chaos and sadness that was going on around.
That's what this podcast is. This podcast
Yeah.
is a pandemic sanity project. Exactly
Yes,
that.
that's what it was. So I didn't know anything about recording. I used to just demo my songs, just record on a cell phone. You know, it's like good
Yeah.
enough. These are demos, fine. But I wanted to at least try to make it sound, you know, at least like a college level effort.
Mhm.
And so I didn't know what I was doing. I recorded most of the guitars and I was like, these just sound not good at all. And I don't think the album that I released, it's just like demo level quality. I'm happy with the way it sounds now, but the first take, I reached out to the internet with anybody that I was friends with on the internet. I was like, help, I need help. How do I do this to make it sound like it's okay? I got some really solid advice, re-recorded all the guitars. And then, you know, I went back and did the vocals, and I had a really enjoyable time doing the vocals mostly, but there were times where I was doing nation state vocals and I was just like, why the fuck am I doing this? This is so difficult. And like, I was just like, there were moments where I was like, this is ridiculous that I'm doing this, but I finished it and I'm glad that I did it. You know, it took a couple months and I was very, very thankful to have those moments where I was just thinking about that album. As a way to kind of escape from everything else.
How many like guitar tracks did you track for each song? Like, do you have like multiple layers of like vocals and multiple layers of guitars? Like, tell me a little bit about like what you see when you like open up your Pro Tools or your Logic or whatever it is that you recorded it in.
So I record in Audacity because I'm a novice.
Nice.
So I have guitar left, guitar right, and then always doubled vocals. And then there are a lot of additional vocals. Sometimes there were upwards of 20 vocal tracks.
Amazing.
I did some harmony stuff. I kind of went off what they had, but then I added some of my own stuff. There's some really poppy kind of layered vocals in Refusing to Be a Man that I really enjoy. But yeah, it's like, and I didn't record this to a click because I was still very novice. And so nothing is to a click. So I would record a scratch guitar and that would be my click.
Okay.
But I would, if I ever did anything like this going forward, I would absolutely use a click track. And it would make it a lot easier.
It would make it easier to sing over in the long run. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So do you have any particular favorite tracks that are on the record that came out and you're like, I really feel good about these few in particular?
I really like Resisting, and I really like Rio. I love Rio. I was really, really unsure with how I was going to pull that one off. And it's one of my favorites. I also really enjoy State Lottery. I was able to get one of my friends to do some of the talk stuff. And I really enjoy that one.
Is that who did your Noam Chomsky narration?
Yeah. My friend, Dylan, roommate, he's a really funny guy. He's got a really good, really amazing voice. And I knew he would be able to do a really solid talk track. So I was like, here, you can do this.
Amazing. Some of my favorite, like I really, really love your John K. Samson tunes on the record. I think that you absolutely crushed it on Gifts in particular. And I really I'm glad you mentioned Rio de San Atlanta, Manitoba. We haven't done that episode yet, but like the part on the record that made me kind of made the hair on my arm stand up a little bit was when you went, the lazy, shiftless populations of the poor. And I absolutely loved that part. And I was like, this is amazing. I'm so glad this exists. You know what I mean? I just love that. And I really loved your People's History version. I really loved your Refusing to Be a Man version. So like I really do think that you came up with something really, really cool here that I think a lot of listeners would appreciate. And I love the fact that you referred to it as demo quality. I was listening to the In Defense of Ska podcast the other day, and this is sort of a side note, but like I was listening to the one with Max from Eve 6 where he was talking about the sound, like Operation Ivy sound system, and how like records aren't made in that fashion anymore, like with the sound recording. And so this to me is like kind of like a harkening back to like late 80s record making in DIY punk. You know what I'm saying? So it's like this is like the kind of thing that would like come out in the 80s as like a quote unquote professionally recorded version of a record. So like you're tapping into something which is like very 80s in style, and it's like addressing this 90s thing which had this big Ryan Green production, but you're making it in like that Op Ivy style of recording sound. You know what I'm saying here? Am I making sense?
Absolutely. I mean, even back in the day before everything went digital, I would demo on 4-track.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. That's just like this is just the limitations of my setup here at my house.
Yeah.
I love it. I love my little nook that I have, but I have serious limitations, and I recognize them, and then I don't ever try to exceed it.
Yeah, I love it, man. I think that it really gives a special atmosphere to the record. So I appreciate it a lot for what it is. Like, I like the way it sounds because it's just unique and fascinating, and you do lots of little weird things on it that like really get my ears perked up with like your own personal like Robby isms, essentially, and I really dug it. So we're on the Pre-Teen McCarthyist episode, right? We're doing this for Pre-Teen McCarthyist, and I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit about what is unique about Pre-Teen McCarthyist to you as a song, and like any like emotional connections or personal stories that may connect to this tune in particular. I'm just curious about your connection to this song specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to this song quite a lot. I grew up in a very white, very conservative town. Very, very pro Reagan, anti-communism. And I obviously didn't find and discover propaganda until much later. But I listened to that song. I think back to, my childhood and being like, the fact that I knew I needed to get out of there and I didn't really quite fit in. And the part on that song where Chris is like, "Don't let those fuckers drag you down."
Mm-hmm.
I love where I grew up. It was a fine place for a kid to just be able to be a kid and get in trouble without getting in trouble. You know what I mean? Like doing stupid teenage shit, but it wasn't good for me to grow as a human being and on a cultural level. It was very, very much pro capitalism is the only way, and fuck any other ism that comes along to challenge it. Like that was where I grew up. So it pulls on my heartstrings when I listen to it, even to today, because I can just go right back to that kind of place.
Nice. Did you have any like specific moments or experiences recording this version for your record that kind of stand out to you as far as this one goes for the creative process?
I mean, I just remember recording it and just having I just remember thinking about coming back from vacations at the beach and heading back home and just being, I don't know, it was weird. I had these really weird memories that kind of came back of like, not terrible times while I was recording it, but of just like moments in my life when I was a kid in that age. It was really kind of weird. But I just remember like there's a specific highway that we would always come back home from, and that was just burned in my brain while I was recording it. I don't know. It's weird. So it brought back a lot of childhood imagery.
I love it. Well, Robby, where can people find your record if they, want to check this out and they want to see some of your other projects? Where would you direct people if they want to check out the whole entire thing?
Well, anybody who wants to listen to the Less Talk More Rock Ghostwrite cover album, you can do that at the Ghostwrite. That's Ghost and then WRITE .bandcamp.com.
Awesome. Fabulous.
And that's
yeah,
it.
go
That's
ahead.
where you can find anything. That's really the only site I keep up to date. I do a little bit on social media on Facebook, but really the music is the most important thing to me. So just go to the Ghostwrite's Bandcamp page.
Nice. Well, Robby, what does this band Propaganda sort of mean to you as like a fan of music and a person who cares about the world? Can you like sort of summarize your feelings about the impact this band has had on your life?
They've had so much of an impact on my life. I was living with and friends with a lot of veg and vegan folk when I lived in Baltimore. But it really wasn't until Supporting Cast came out that I really had to stop and have a hard look in the mirror about some of my life choices. And that album was the kick in the ass for me to just go vegan.
Mm-hmm.
That was the album. And like I said, I had a lot of amazing friends in Baltimore that were vegan and that helped me out. It made it like I saw it was accessible. It made sense. And that's the biggest thing for me personally that Propaganda hasn't influenced me with. Oh, they influenced me with my writing and how I walk through life, but specifically with veganism, it was the kick in the pants that I needed.
Nice. Well, Robby Lester, man, I am friggin' stoked that you found me, that you reached out, that you wanted to do this with me. And it's awesome to make a new friend that's only a couple hours down the road, and it's awesome to make connections with people around, because now I feel like because of this podcast, I can go certain places in the country and around the world and like be like, hey, there's somebody on the other end that I could like hang out with and have dinner with if I find myself in that place. So I'm really excited by your Less Talk More Rock covers record. I've sent it to a couple of friends already that are like, whoa, this is interesting and bizarre and fabulous. So
amazing.
I'm getting some positive comments already about everything. So I'm grateful to you. And I just thank you for coming on and doing this with me and hanging out and chatting Propaganda.
Yeah, amazing. I don't know if you heard that, but my dog Huxley just barked. He said hello. So
he appreciates it, Propaganda as well. So hi, Huxley. Right. So Robby, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thank you so much. And this is amazing. I'm on like episode 5 or 6 of this podcast, and it's phenomenal. Everybody should listen to it.
Thanks, buddy.
Bye.
All right. Thank you so much to Robby Lester from the Ghostwrite for that great chat and cover. Up next on this episode are 2 conversations that have appeared elsewhere on this podcast in the past. First up is the actor Ryan Onan. Ryan grew up in San Diego, played in the band Against the Wall, and is now an actor in shows such as Big Sky, Queen of the South, Ray Donovan, and Fargo. This is a snippet of Ryan's full episode, which appeared on the podcast in April of 2022. It was one of the most enjoyable interviews imaginable, so if you enjoyed this conversation about I Was A Pre-Teen McCarthyist, be sure to check out Ryan's whole episode, where we discuss so much more. But leading into Ryan's chat is another cover of I Was A Pre-Teen McCarthyist by Adam Reed of the musical moniker Shepherds and Sailors from Denver, Colorado. You can find his albums Wicker Cathedrals, Spill, and One of Us Needs This, where you get your tunes. So thank you so much for listening, and enjoy Ryan Onan and Shepherds and Sailors.
It heralds
Edwards Elementary. You pay your respect to your God, our flag, our military. In grade 3 I had a written composition about the global threat of communism. And I was the luckiest 8-year-old McCarthyist of 1979. I spent spring break on the flight line. I'm a base in the Carolinas. U.S. version of my dad had signed us and 12 years later, the Gatling I touched was strapped to the nose of a USA-10, separated flesh from bone, and honed its skills on lesser humans, and thus confirmed the suspicions earned in the 7 years preceding about the lies I was told, and if truth be known, I'm probably better off believing. They said I'm better off believing. Somehow better off believing. But how could they do this to me? Born head first and brought up ankle deep. And maybe you're a lot like me, identified for 14 years without a choice, terrified the morning you woke up and realized that if and when you jump ship, you either swim to shore or drown. Don't let the fuckers drag you down.
To hold beliefs, and how if you are not exposed to certain things, then you will have no idea that those exist, and your surroundings and your nature and your nurture are so profoundly important. Like Chris's years of formative education, growing up on a military base,
Totally.
going to school at Harold Edwards Elementary, and we have this these lines of how could they do this to me? Do you know what I mean?
Born head first, brought up ankle deep. Right?
Absolutely. Tell me, keep this going here. Tell me about your thoughts on Pre-Teen McCarthyist here, because I feel like it flows right into this.
Yeah, I mean, so I do this movie. It's called The Dry Land, and like I said, it's about a guy coming back from Iraq, and he's dealing with the post-traumatic stress disorder. It was like it was an independent film. I played the guy, the main guy in it, and Melissa Leo played my mom in it. Like America Ferrera played my wife in it. Like Jason Ritter played my best friend, and Wilmer Valderrama played this war buddy that I had, and we'd come back and we'd had a friend die there, and we were on this journey to go see him. and and through the process of just attempting to get into one person's understanding, and like, I mean, I've as I was like prepping for this and talking to people, and I mean, I remember even just like I was trying to lift weights to get like somewhat in shape to look like, and the guy who was training me, I just like broke down crying in the middle of my, because I was suddenly just hit by this. I mean, just these guys, you know, that have gone through this desperately wanted their story told. You know, they wanted to be seen in some way, and it told a very brutal story of this guy going there because he wanted to be a fucking hero. He don't know. He wanted to do something. He wanted to get out of the, you know, whatever, you know, it was, he wanted to get out of this place that he was and try and do something. And there was very limited. This is like, he's like West Texas. Like he just didn't have any opportunities necessarily. This is a story. It's not, you know, but it's based off of, you know, all these accounts of the writer director, you know, had talked to. And suddenly I'm like swept up into this. I ended up doing like a USO tour during the war. We flew into Qatar and then into Baghdad. We had like a missile lock on us, like while we were coming in. And I spent a lot of time, I was training with the National Guard a little bit for this, and just spending time with these people. And just like I said before, it's just people like that were funny and lovely and from all different places, but like for the most part, disenfranchised people that were trying to make their lives better in some way. And that they were there, and they didn't give a fuck about politics, and they didn't give a fuck about like what you know, who is necessarily completely in charge, because what they cared about was protecting the person right next to them, the person that came to them from some other place in the country that was also disenfranchised in some way. You know, it's interesting just going into Baghdad, and I was, you know, I was like, it was like me, Jason Ritter, and America Ferrera, and they knew who they were. They didn't have a fucking clue who I was. Like, I think I signed like 2,500 autographs of people that like were like had no idea that, but like they were just happy for some kind of break from the monotony. I think more than anything. But it was also this feeling that I was confronting my own belief systems in this, you know, and that lyric where he's, you know, and maybe you're a lot like me, identified 14 years without a choice, you know, terrified that the morning you wake up to realize you either swim for shore or drown. Don't let the fuckers drag you down. And it was like, I had been brought up with a certain belief system from my parents. Then I hit Chris Hanna, and then I had this belief system. Yep. And then it was like, but what do I believe? And you know, like when I'm actually faced with the people and faced with the circumstance, and be like, and the truth is, fuck war, fuck the mechanisms of war, fuck the greed that promotes wars, fuck, you know, all of the power grabs and greed. That is all stuff needed to be, you know, to resist. But, you know, but it's complicated because there are horrific people that want to do horrible things, and whether or not the reasoning behind why people stand up against them, you know, it can be completely depleted and you know, muddied by all this money and you know, propping up, you at the end of the day, you don't really feel like the powers that be care about people. They care about institutions, and they care about, you know, economic systems and advantage and all this different stuff. But there's still people in the midst of all of it that do need to be saved and do need to, save themselves and all this stuff. Anyway, it just ends up being really complicated. So I'm there as an example. We were there on this base, and part of why I went also was just deep curiosity and hearing Chris Hanna's voice in my head of what is this? And he had grown up on a military base. I had like never even really been on a military base. Looking around, they wanted me to sign like this missile, like, and I thought of that, that line in Pre-Teen McCarthyist where he says, that Gatling I touched, went on to like, separate flesh from bone, or, and I thought, I can't do that. I'm not going to sign this thing. Like, and it was in front of all these people, it was like a thing. And I was just like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it. Like, and it was so fucking awkward.
Yeah, I bet.
Like, it was super, super awkward. But I was just in this moment, I was like, no, like there's a certain amount of inertia when it comes to anything. And you're like, oh, I could just go with the flow here. Who the fuck would know?
Yeah,
I could just do it. Nobody's gonna fucking know. Like, Chris Hanna's not gonna know. Nobody's gonna know. But it is one of those circumstances where I would know. I would know that I had done that, and I would always have it in my head of like, I can support and believe in this man or this woman that is sitting on this in this barracks next to me, scared that they're going to lose their friend, scared that, that are they doing the right thing? Are they doing the wrong thing? It's too late now anyway, and I can believe in that person and care about this person, but am I going to sign a missile? Fuck that shit,
Yeah.
Even though, you could say it's the sword in medieval times that's protecting the castle, where everybody's, the people that want to come in and kill and rape and pillage, this is the sword that's protecting them, but I just don't trust it. I don't trust that sword at the end of the day. But it was eye-opening to see. It's interesting, all the people that were like really high up and like generals or I met everybody. It was nuts. A lot of those people got drafted, right? And so they came from like the coasts where the massive populations were, like, so you get all these people that are like the leaders of it are all from like, they grew, this guy grew up in Brooklyn, this guy was from the Bronx, that, the people from California, and all the enlisted people are from the middle of the country.
Right.
Like, which is an interesting dynamic that I didn't, anyway, I talked a lot about that, but
no, it's fine. And like, what a song too. What an
the actual
the
totally.
Music, like the
such
music
a kick-ass song.
Like the way it opens up with that like that bass drum. Boop, boop, bop, boop, 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 bop, boop, boop, boop,
oh yeah, the vocals just over the drums, it's
unbelievable.
So cool and different from all the rest of the songs, right? Like there's just like a thick kind of like sarcasm in the song, but also like a deep sadness in it, that it doesn't, when it talks about, that gun that he touched there, that comes in, and it's like this, it's these sad movements in the song of like regret, and from top to bottom there is just this song, and all their songs are just packed with emotion.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people do that, and definitely don't do it as well as this band has done it, where it's just packed from top to bottom with heart and beliefs and blood and guts and care and that, and they constantly give, here's another take, here's something else, this is my belief system, and he constantly will say this thing, step forward, and then say, and I'm just as bad.
Yep.
Completely owns up to all his shit. And and it's just very refreshing.
Last but certainly not least, bringing us in for a landing on this episode of I Was a Pre-Teen McCarthyist is Dr. Tim Gill, Assistant Professor of Sociology at the University of Tennessee. Tim's full episode appears on July 3rd, 2022 on the podcast, so if you enjoy this short chat on I Was a Pre-Teen McCarthyist, be sure to check out Tim's full episode available as well. Thank you so much for listening to this interviews episode of I Was a Pre-Teen McCarthyist from Less Talk More Rock, and let's bring it in with the landing with Dr. Tim Gill.
Excited to chat with you about Pre-Teen McCarthyist.
8-year-old McCarthyist of 1979. I spent spring break on the flight line of a base in the Carolinas. U.S. version of my daddy signed us in. 12 years later, the Gatling I judged strapped to the nose of a USA 10, separated flesh from bone and honed its skills on lesser humans and thus
First, we'll go just kind of in order of how the songs appear throughout the chronology of the band. And I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit to start about why you chose Pre-Teen McCarthyist as kind of an intro, and then we can dive into some of the lyrics and music.
Sure. Yeah, this song, Pre-Teen McCarthyist, is probably, I think it's the most meaningful song to me out of their catalog. I mean, I love a lot of their songs, but this one I really enjoyed, and it gives you insight into Chris's life, because a lot of songs aren't so personal, I think. And there are, a few throughout the catalog, but a lot of them are sort of on substantive issues, be it vegetarianism, U.S. foreign policy, etc. And I really like this because it gives you a lot of insight into his upbringing and sort of philosophy, if you will, a life philosophy. And it's I very much connect with the upbringing that he talks about. I went to school in Cleveland. I grew up in a neighborhood, West Park neighborhood. It's the west side of Cleveland. It's a lot of people that work for the city. My dad was a pipe fitter, and a lot of cops, a lot of firefighters. The area is very loud about its Irish heritage and and their working class nature. There's even a brewery there now called Working Class Brewery, and they have a pipe fitters porter, which I appreciate. But I went to a Catholic grade school there, St. Pat's. In some ways, there was repressive elements. They didn't want me to have patches on my backpack. They didn't want me to wear a Suicide Machines shirt, and everything was sort of like, I mean, I still have some teachers from there that I'm still in contact with, but, still the social studies curriculum was the US is great. And of course, God is great and all these types of things. And so, it's very insightful, relatable, and in the end, hopeful. It traces out, I think, how we are indoctrinated in schools and the basics of, what sociologists call a civil religion, and to be patriotic and stand in front of the flag and have little art projects about the flag and all this type of thing. But along the way, you start finding bands like Propaganda, or you start reading something on the internet about the history of US foreign policy, and you start realizing that things are not the way they're presented. And in that moment, everything in my life thereafter sort of came down. It has been about realizing hypocrisy of the U.S. and the indoctrination, and having a sort of global vision about what the U.S. has done throughout the world and how others perceive the U.S. Like that sort of epiphany, if you will, is something that is still with me. It's something that my research is about, what I read about, what I try to challenge in a lot of my work. I love the line when he says, maybe you're a lot like me. You identify 14 years without a choice, terrified the moment you wake up and realize, you jump ship, you either swim for shore or drown. And that is sort of like we oftentimes come to this moment or like a break in our life when we can go different ways. And some folks don't question the indoctrination. Some folks, buy the flag and fly it outside their house and whatever, but they aren't as critical often are not as critical of US foreign policy and of the founding of the country and all the rest of it, And so that song just always really, it just, you're 14, you're in 8th grade, and then you kind of get out, you go to high school, and he said, it just, him saying, maybe you're a lot like me, be it's just like, yeah, you can totally relate to that. But then it's optimistic too, I think, when you said, don't let the fuckers drag you down. Like, be confident. And yeah, things can be alienating, like I remember going into high school and I went to Catholic high school too. And I was describing myself as an agnostic by that point. And people were sort of like coming up to me and like, you shouldn't be in this school if you're an agnostic, and you shouldn't, et cetera, et cetera. And it's risky too when you're a kid and you start thinking differently and you start challenging authority figures in some way, or the narrative of the country or stuff about religion. It can be a very alienating experience. It's much more comfortable just to sort of sing the praises of the school and religion and the country. And so this song I think is great because he's saying, look, I went through the same thing. Don't let these fuckers drag you down.
Yeah, there's a line too that I'm curious about your thoughts on. So since your research is so involved in US foreign policy, the line separated flesh from bone and honed its skills on lesser humans is a line that I'm particularly curious to have you comment on.
Yeah. I think that's another realization, that when you start looking around, you see that war is basically everywhere. Before moving to Knoxville, I was in Wilmington, North Carolina, and their number one tourist attraction, and people are there all the time, is a big like USS ship. It's a warship. Like that's a tourist attraction. Like people want to go and climb aboard this warship and look around. I mean, you see people in Hummers. You go to this store, I'm always going to the store to buy, get my son some toys, and they have a freaking tank. They sell, battle tanks. And so you start looking around and you just see this glorification of war everywhere. We've invaded places like Grenada and Panama, Iraq. There is oftentimes a justification. You hear people, something from Tucker Carlson came out around the time of the Iraq war, and he was calling individual, Iraqis, he was calling them monkeys and saying, basically like they're less than us. Who cares? I remember when Iraq was going on, and I was at John Carroll in Cleveland, and there was a debate, and one woman had said, who cares if we bomb them? They have bombs going off every day. It doesn't matter, and it's just a sort of depiction of that. Yeah, that there are some, individuals that are seemingly less than others, or that we should control them, if it's through violence, if it's through war, or if it's through other methods, and that's sort of what I look at in my own research, that the US and its promotion of democracy tries to get certain political parties elected. I mean, they basically intervene in elections and politics to try to get their preferred candidate elected, and it's sort of, to me, I talk about this in my work, I actually use a term that Propaganda has deployed in the song. It's neocolonialist, in the sense that, just like the British and others, and the US in some places too, they think that it's their duty to provide tutelage to individuals who don't understand their own interests, right? And so in Venezuela, citizens were voting for Chavez. Chavez wasn't a perfect person. There was plenty of issues regarding democracy in the country, but the reality of the situation is that Venezuelans voted for him. That's who they selected. Why does the US feel that they need to go in and tell them, no, that's not who you should be voting for. You should be voting for these other people. And that's what they did. They had all these programs where they would, everything from creating fake community groups that would distribute information, basically trying to push people towards the opposition. They even linked up with some universities to provide schooling and promoting free market so that individuals could, as they said, push back against socialist ideology. So they had designed all these programs that were basically interventionists to try to get Venezuelans to vote a particular way, the way that the U.S. wanted them to. And so, it's still a mindset, I think, the term lesser humans, I still think it's a mindset that the U.S. knows better, and they understand how to do democracy and how to do politics, and that they think that they should be imposing it. Meanwhile, we've had multiple presidents in the last few decades who've gotten elected without the popular vote. So it's like, we got a lot of problems here at home with our own democracy and electoral college and all the rest of it. But yet we still have this colonialist mindset that we should be going around and telling people how to vote and et cetera.
Tim, something else. So Chris, I didn't grow up in a military family. So Chris's perspective on this song is something that I've never personally experienced, but the bravery that it would take in order to grow up a certain way and then to turn your back on it in a way that everybody in your family would be able to see exactly how you've flipped, and then having to be a part of that family. It takes a lot of guts. You know what I mean? What do you think about this, this bravery of growing up in a certain mindset and then just flipping your worldview so publicly and so, extremely? Yeah.
Definitely brave. I mean, when you find a lot of, I always, and of course there can be various permutations of this, but yeah, I mean, I hear a lot of stories from students and young folks and other people involved in the punk scene too, that they would come from a conservative family and where they're, the family's watching Fox News, and then they just totally have a break with that, and how much, how that can cause a rift between people. I mean, again, in some ways, yeah, life would be easier if you were just sort of went along with what your family said and didn't make any, didn't ruffle any feathers, and all the gatherings could be okay. But people have convictions, and, yeah, I don't know. It'd be fascinating. I don't know if Chris has talked more in depth about that relationship with his family and military and all this type of thing. But yeah, I would be very fascinated to know, to learn some more about that, if there was a big rift that was caused. And it's weird because my parents weren't in the military, but my grandfather was, and my grandmother, and one of my one uncle and an aunt. And so one of my brothers was in the Navy and came out. So I do have some lingering military folks in my family. I can understand how that could cause rifts. I'll just leave it there.
Tell me what you think about the music of this one. Do you have any particular thoughts about the performance in general of this tune? I personally love Jord's performance on this one. Tell me what you think about some of the music here.
Yeah, the drums are excellent. I mean, it's clearly during their, more poppy punk phase. And the song is very simple. I love playing the song on the guitar. It's a lot of the same chords, that's a lot of the same 4 chords, and there's some various permutations towards the end and whatnot. But it's so subtle and muted, and there's no chorus really. And yet there's only 4 chords pretty much, but the way that it's arranged still makes it very complicated, far more complicated than your straight ahead, just punk song, up tempo, verse, chorus, whatever. Just the ending of the song is always, it's weird. There's some bands you listen to and at particular points in your life, and you listen to them a lot, and you can't stomach even going back and listen because you've listened to it so much, it's worn off, or you've evolved. But that song is one that's just the ending the song when he starts to go into maybe you're a lot like me, it's like that, like after, that whole end of that song is just like still gives me the chills. Like it just, it's so it just like you can feel like the passion and emotion. And I just, that part of that song still just like totally crushes me. And
I gotta tell you, this is a song that every time I see them live, I hold hope in the back of my mind that Pre-Teen McCarthyist will be busted out.